uh, was very learn a lot of stuff. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the hard work that you have done. And so let's start. So today we're gonna be talking how we can get reactive UI into Uno platform application. So my name is Andres Pineda. I'm a mobile developer during the day, and at night or during my free time, I like to contribute to open source project as most as I can. Here is my Twitter handle and the Uno platform, which is the knowledge that I will be talking about, handle as well. So let's get started. So what is Uno platform? Uno platform is a UI layer, is a UI framework that you can use to create applications that can be run in different targets. For targets, I wanted to use the word targets instead of platform because at the beginning, Uno started as a way to run UWP, macOS, and Android. But in the last years, the last years, we say that Uno platform has opened up to support other platforms as well, like WebAssembly, macOS, Linux. Recently was announced the support for Linux, and even Windows 7 that we all know that the support for Windows 7 has been stopped. So Uno platform is an open source library since 2018. Well, it's been open source since 2018, but Uno platform has been around for many years now. But before 2018, it was a proprietary library. It's free to use, and it is on the Apache 2.0 licensing. Uno platform, what it does basically is that you have a unique XAML UWP application, and by changing the target, you can have the same code base to be built and run into all the applications, into all the platforms. And those platforms can be WebAssembly, all the different browsers that supports WebAssembly as of now, and desktop being UWP and macOS, the two main desktop, Android, and as well, or Android and iOS for the mobile part, and as well as Linux. Linux was recently introduced, and it's not in the desktop section because of there are many other places where there are Linux running that you can have Uno platform application running, as can be seen the IoT devices, for example. So, but how is this possible? How can you have a UWP application and be able to run it into different platforms? Well, the way this is done is the Uno platform implements the UWP and WinUI APIs, meaning that for a UWP developer, it will feel just right, like home. You will be working with the controls, and the APIs are all available for UWP, and Uno platform beneath is going to be doing the work of making your app available for the different platforms that we mentioned a couple of seconds ago. But it's not only the UI part. So you can have, you will have the UI, that is step panel, text block, and so on, but also the non-UI part of the UWP is going to be available for you to use for your application. And when I say non-UI, I talk about file accessing, geofencing, geolocation, sensors, and so on. One of the good things about Uno platform is that it reuse the existing libraries that are in the market. So use Visual Studio or Writer as well for development. Use NuGet packages, and by also you can use any library that targets .NET Standard 2.0. And with that, we can see just some of those libraries that we can have access to. And by reusing all those things, it will make it pretty easy for .NET developers to jump in and try and give it a try to the platform, to the framework, Uno platform. There is a platform mapping. So as I was saying at the beginning, the developer, when you create an application, you work by using the UWP APIs. So you're going to be using test block, you're going to be using a textbooks, you're going to be using a panel, and all those things are going to be mapped to the platform that you're targeting to in that moment. Here we see an example of what a text block, UWP text block means in each one of the different platforms. So you have the UI label, text view, the paragraph for WebAssembly, and the canvas if you're using Ski Sharp as a target. The same happens when you're using a non-UI functionality. And sure, let me do quickly how can you start doing Uno platform application. Is to get Uno platform on your Visual Studio, the first things that we need to do is that we need to install a template because Uno platform is not part of the out-of-the-box Visual Studio installation. So you come to the extension and you find for in the online, you find for the Uno, and this is going to bring you the Uno platform solution templates. With this one, you will be able to later, once install it, you click on install. I already have installed it. You will be able to create a find new project with it. So let's do that. Let's say find new project. And from here, we will be able to filter the solutions that we want to create. So we have two options here. We have the creating a cross-platform application, or by creating a cross-platform library with Uno platform. Let's create an app and let's call it anything. Let's call it RxUI app temp, and let's just hit on enter. And this is gonna create the scaffolding of a Uno application. And we will see once this is complete how Uno creates, how it's the solution is structured of a Uno UI, of a Uno platform application. So since finding project out of the box is gonna create all these different targets. It's gonna create the Watson target, it's gonna create the Droid, iOS, macOS, and UWP, which is gonna be the default. But also there's a share library target here, share library. Here is where all the code is gonna be. So for example, this main page, it's the one that is gonna be shared or in all the different targets that we have here. So, and just by creating a find new project, if we just create and run, we should be able to see an Uno platform application running without further configuration. Well, as can be seen here, as I was mentioning, by the time this is compiling, this doesn't like this. And let's wait, local machine, and we're using a test block. So if you're a UWP developer, you will feel very familiar with what a text block is and all the different properties that the textbooks have and provides. So this is Uno running on UWP, but at the same time, you can have the same application running on, let's use Android, for example. And
just a quick question from people. Can we zoom the text a little bit in Visual Studio?
Oh, sure. Since I created a new application, that's why it didn't take it. Let me make it to 200. Should be good there. If not, just let me know and I can adjust it a bit more. I don't know how to change this part of the Visual Studio.
I think that part's fine.
Okay.
Just focus on text.
Okay. So what I'm doing right now is that I'm building and I'm running the Android version of the application. But in the same way, we could run the Watson version and the iOS version. For the macOS version, we will need to be running the application from a Mac. This is limitations from the Visual Studio. We don't have a connector the same way that we have for iOS. So here can be seen that the same application that was created for Android for UWP that we're running a couple of minutes ago is also running on Android. And let's change this just to play a little bit with.
Another quick question from an audience member: is the template extension available for Visual Studio for Mac? Do you know?
Nope. There's not Visual Studio. There's no Visual Studio for Mac extension for Uno, but there's a Visual Studio Code extension. And from Visual Studio Code, if we have time, I have a Mac here. I could remote connect, and I can show you how you can create find new project from Visual Studio Code on a Mac, and then open on Visual Studio as your IDE or writer. And let's change just a couple of things here. Let's make this a stack panel. And I'm gonna be adding a slider. Let's just put a margin. It's just something quick, something so you can see all the different controls that you can have. A stack panel. We have out of the box support and the HotReload. So as you can see, I had just saved, and immediately we had the control showing on the page. So it's just my slider. And something that I want to show here is one of the powerful features of XAML, which is the binding. And this is why XAML is loved by many developers, because well, later we'll be talking about this, but it's the binding capabilities the XAML provides are we cannot find those capabilities in many other platforms. And let's say that we're gonna, nope, I just want to value. Sorry, so my IntelliSense. I committed one mistake that I try to avoid every time, which is updated Visual Studio before my presentation. And I hope that didn't break my environment. But what I'm trying to do here is just trying to show you how you quickly can bind the slider value and use the value of the slider as the text that is going to be displayed in the text box that is just here. So Visual Studio is frozen. I can't be see. So oh, it came back. So yeah, it came back. There was something going on with Visual Studio, but at least it's showing there. So with just a couple of lines of code and using the binding capabilities that comes with XAML in part of UWP, we're able to do this binding of the values of one element to the other. Let me continue. Wait a second. It keeps using there we go. So, what we just show was a very, very, oh, can you see that? So something happened with my video card. What we just show was a very short example of what can be done with Uno, but Uno is a rich UI platform, and with it can they created many UI-rich application. Right now, I'm showing a couple of applications that has been created using Uno platform, and the fact that Uno platform was made open source only 2 years ago doesn't mean that it's only 2 years ago of experience that the developers behind Uno has. My presentation is adding weird because of the video. I'm gonna cut it there. So yeah, full XAML support. You can have full XAML support out of the box, control templating, styling, visual state, so animations, data binding, as we saw, text blocks, shapes and brushes. All that is part of the UWP is already implemented in Uno platform. Of course, there are still some APIs, some controls that are not yet implemented, but the developers behind Uno are working really hard to make them available. But something else I mentioned that is open source, right? So if you try Uno and you see that there are issues, there are things that are not yet implemented, and you want to participate, I invite you to come over and help a little bit. How does the location and images work? So for Uno, you just set, when you create an Uno application, you just need to deal with one set of resources, meaning that if you're an iOS developer, you know that you need to have at least two different sizes of the image. This is the 2x and the 3x. And for Android, you have different densities. And with working on the Uno platform, you don't need to go to the platform specific project and set the images there. You just set the image in the UWP project or the share project. And from there are some suffix that you can use to have the different sizes. And Uno platform is going to be dealing with the different sizes for different platforms underneath. The same for localized access. Let's say that you have an image that you want to show only on what you want. There's an image that you want to display specifically on a French when the user has the device or the desktop in French. That image is going to be selected based on the language. Same for resources. So we're working with strings and that. And this is an application that showcase Uno platform. Is if you go right now to the playground, that platform, that Uno, you'll be able to do some experimental things with Uno, with not even installing Uno on your computer. From there, you'll be able to see the different controls that are available. And did I mention that this was created with Uno? So this is an Uno application targeting WASM, and that you can run Uno on top of it. So it is amazing, and it is available for you to use and as I say, play around with Uno. So for WebAssembly, I want to mention, and one thing is that I'm mentioning some of what Uno is. So I don't want to just jump in how to work with Uno and reactive UI when there are probably people in the audience that doesn't know or haven't heard about Uno or doesn't know the capabilities of all the things that can be done. So this is what we're doing. We're doing quickly going through what Uno capabilities are. And right now, let's get into the WebAssembly work, because we were talking about the previous application that we were showing here. This is WebAssembly. And it's good to mention that the way that Uno does the UI for WebAssembly is by doing HTML rendering. Besides HTML rendering, there are other ways to do that, which is by using the HTML rendering. By using the templating, which is how Blazor does it. So basically, you have a template, and then in the browser you have the data and binding everything. And the other way that you can have is by using the Canvas pixel. Canvas pixeling have some advantages, but some of the disadvantages of Canvas is that you don't have the native control properties that you may want, and you will have to print every pixel by itself. But talking about every pixel by itself, Uno also supports SkillSharp. And if you don't know what Skia Shop is, let's start with Skia. Skia is an open source 2D library that it is used as a graphic library, and it is used for many open source projects out there. Google Chrome and many other projects use it. So that's a Skia. Skia Sharp is the binding library on top of Skia. So basically, it's just using all the power of Skia and getting it to the .NET work. And Uno recently added support to use Skia as the rendering UI. So that way we're gonna be able to render an application on the Wasm by using Skia. If I'm not wrong, also on the Linux part, you're gonna be running Skia of your UI rendering. By using this URL, Skia Shard -wasm.platform.uno, there's some of the controls that you can play around, and you can see how is the rendering on Uno and Skia, how they can work together. HotReload we saw recently. So part of the Uno platform is looking to create rapid application development where you are able to modify your XAML and see your XAML updating on your simulator, emulator, depending of the platform that you are targeting, or even on your browser. It has support for partial reloads. And also, if you go to the GitHub Uno platform repository, you can start from there the Git pod, and from the Git pod environment, you will be able to have to run your application without not even installing. So again, this is a way for people to getting started with Uno without not even having to install the computer, but installing the anything on your computer. But also it enables the possibility for you to contribute. If you're in the open source, it enables the way to contribute and making it easier for any contributor. So, but what about Uno Platform MVVM? Unfortunately, I can say unfortunately, because sometimes probably you will want something out of the box. Uno at the moment doesn't have any MVVM capabilities like coming from Uno. But as it was mentioned earlier, this is a slide that was shown earlier. Uno supports any library that supports .NET 0. .NET Standard 2.0 library, Uno platform will be able to run it. And just right there, we see that we have three different MVVM frameworks that we can use. We have Prism, Reactive UI, and MVVM Lite Toolkit. There are others, I know for sure there are others, but these are just an example of the things that we can already use. In this presentation, we're gonna be talking mostly about how can we add support of reactive UI to Uno platform application, because something is that to add support to MVVM in an Uno application, Uno platform application is just a regular .NET application. So we have access to the unnotified property, and we can see that if we come to the same application that we created earlier, if we would like to, this application have added some MVVM support, we could just come here and add a new class. Let's call it main view model. Let's use the class so we don't mistake. You know, if you have done any MVVM, you know that you will be having a view model, and then you'll be implementing the iNotify property change, which is, I think it was mentioned earlier. I think it was mentioned earlier that everything in .NET, most everything comes from an event. It's because it's missing this. comes from an event. So when you're working with MVVM, it's just the main thing that you will be working with if you're doing by hand is you'll be implementing this class and doing the race, creating your properties, and making sure that every time you set a value to one of the properties, it is notified to the view that is waiting. Remember, MVVM is no more than model view model in that order. But I recently listened a very good friend of mine talking about MVVM and .NET, and he mentioned something that I will repeat here literally. Friends don't let friends implement manually the iNotify property change. There are many MVVM frameworks out there that are already tested and retested. And did I say tested? Yeah, tested again. And let's say that by creating ourselves, we will not be taking care of many things that many people already are taking care in those MVVM frameworks. Just to mention some of them, in the previous slide, I mentioned Prism, I mentioned MVVM Lite, but I also mentioned Reactive UI. And if you are new to the MVVM, let's say MVVM war, MVVM parodies in your application, I would advise you to avoid doing this. And unless you're learning, you want to know how it is. But once you go to like a real application, I would advise you to just go and use one of the libraries. So today, talking about Reactive UI and how can you enable Uno applications to use Reactive UI. It is simple because it was mentioned Reactive UI is already supported. So the things that we're going to be doing is that we're going to be adding the Reactive UI library. It's just open the NuGet package and looking for the Reactive UI, and it should be the first one, and then you select all the projects that you want, and then you install. So by the time installing, it is also good to say that, as it was mentioned, Reactive UI is just one of the many libraries that you can use to make your application reactive. And a part of the group of those libraries, and Annie just mentioned some of them. I would say that Refit, for example, you can use Refit in a Uno platform application the same way you can use Akabash. All of those libraries they use what is reactive programming in Rx.net. So as of now, we should have already the Reactive UI installed in all our platform, and we can confirm it by coming here, for example, and instead of using this, let's use reactive. If I know what it's called, reactive object. So from there, we can see that we have access to what we can say it is the base view model of your application. Will be the base view model of your applications, unless you want to come and there's some application specific things that you want to do and you want to extract it. And you want to extract it, and instead of making all your view models accessing the reactive object, they can access your a second. I'm nervous. Oh gosh. And so from there you can have, so if there's any application specific or business specific needs that you have for your view models, you can just add it here, and all your view models can just inherit from that view model. So from here is a simple reactive UI application. You just have, let's use a string and let's use a name. For simplicity, also there is there is a library that I'm gonna use that it is this one actually. It's select, let me install it. Reactive UI 40 will help me defining my property, so I don't have to be doing the private fields and the properties and doing the race changes. If you want to see, if you have never seen reactive UI, how is it done? Let's say that you want to have a property here that is called, let me call it test. Are you from the one for the underscale for the property for the private? This is actually private. And here you will have a public string. You have a test. And then you will have the same, you have a getter. This is just gonna be returning. This is basic MVVM, but I'm going forward so you can see that if you have done this with any other platform in .NET, it is exactly the same. So for the setters, it is exactly as we see. So we set the value, what we want here. Well, in this case, we're gonna call this the race itself, race property if change. This here, now we're seeing the benefits of using reactive UI as our framework, because from here we are using one of the extension that it's going to allow anybody that is using reactive UI to only notify if there is any value that is changed. If we were doing this manually, we will be checking if the value was different than the previous one, and so checking the value was different, and then just raise if so. So the backend field in this case is test, and the value is just value is getting. So there is, as I said, this is how a reactive UI works across any application, and as can be seen, it is exactly the same that we're gonna be doing when using reactive when using a platform. So the library I installed, which is 40, it helps us to avoid doing all this, because if it is only one or two properties, it is okay. But when you have many properties in a view model, it becomes a mess. It becomes hard to keep track. So with 40, you just annotate your property with this, and at compile time, it will create this for us. So we don't have to be creating this. Good I mentioned, this is actually gonna create this at compile time. This is not using reflection at all, so there's not any performance hit on your application. So yeah, from there, we already know how to do the binding. So we have the main page here. Well, by using reactive UI, we will need to use we will want to use all the different things that come with reactive UI. So talking about MVVM, and any MVVM framework will have this, what I call the 3 pillars of the MVVM. I don't know if that's even a thing, but that's how I call it. And it is the binding. The second one is going to be the command. You want to be able to, from the UI, execute things on the view model. And the third one is going to be the navigation. As a third one, the fourth one, and this is an extra, because I say 3 pillars, right? So an extra, I will call it the containers. Most of the MVVM frameworks will have a container where you can compose your application from there, so you don't have to be doing new objects in other parts of the application. So let's say what I mean with containers is that if we have a main page, there is here, if from here we want to have an access to the view model, we need to set the binding of our view model to our actual page. And let's say that we're gonna call it main view model, and private because I don't need anybody to be doing. So we might want to avoid this. We don't want to be newing objects in our page or any part of the application. There are different ways to deal with this. One is dependency injection. Other one is service locator, and it's mentioned service locator slash because that's exactly the way reactive UI out of the box comes. So reactive UI comes as used as a dependency Splat. Splat is another great library that you can use for many things, but one of the things that's going to help you with is dealing with serving you as a container. So to avoid doing this, we can compose our application on the page, which is the main page. Well, the main app, it's here. So this is where everything starts. We can, if there's something that we want to do, that it's gonna be available when the application starts, we might want to do it here. Like let's say that we want, in our case, we want to avoid this and using Splat to get this dependency instead. So I could create a method, but I'm gonna do it just right here. So I'm gonna get the locator. The locator you can have two different. So you can have the current, which is no mutable. That's the one that you're gonna be using in your other Splat, in your other part of your application. Or you have the current mutable, and I would advise to use the current mutable only here at the when you're doing the registration of your services and your view models. I just mentioned that. Let's just register the view model that we just created, so we can use it. We can use it later in our app, and then this receive a function. Just for simplicity, let's just do this. Well, we don't need this because getting the type from the function itself, but just leave it there for so people can understand what is happening. We just registering, letting know Splat that we are registering a type, and whenever this type is asked, we just want an instance. We want an instance all the time. There are other ways to register, and I don't want to go very deep because if now I'm gonna be talking about reactive UI for long. So we have register constant. If what you really want is just register a value that is going to be used, the same instance is going to be repeating all the time. So your view models, you might want that every time you ask for a view model, it's clear. So you don't want to say the state of your view model to avoid any issues in the future. So from the locator, let me yeah, it's gonna complain. I know for sure. Yeah, because it happened to me earlier. Because there's Splat also comes with a login level. So to avoid this issue that the application doesn't know which one to use, let's just use the Microsoft .NET login level. I think it is the name. Log level actually. Yeah, from there we already have our containers. We already have our or we're doing the registration of the view model, and then if we come to the page, we don't need to do this anymore because now we can use one of the reactive UI capabilities to serve to get that instance of the view model. You don't need to use directly the service locator. There are ways for you to extract the location, when you are getting the services. So you don't need to be using the static all around service locator. But for now, I'm gonna be showing this. And we're telling that we want a service, and the way to get it is just, you just need to pass the type, and it will find you the type that was registered. If there's not type, fine, this will return null. So this is so the way, now that we have our view model instance, we want to set the instance our data binding, our data context in this part. And by doing this, we're telling the page that we're gonna be binding this object to this part, which is the UI. Hopefully this is here. So from here, now the same page that we were seeing, we can replace and use something like this. If I don't wrong, I think it is called test. Let me see in the view model. Yeah, it's called test. For now, let me just remove this, and let me come back to the view model so I can set some tests. Let me, constructor, here we go. And I never remember the order, but here we are. But just setting an initial value so we can have the initial value when the application runs. So basically, here the test block, the test is being bound to the test. For those who love binding in XAML, this is the way to do it. There are ways also to do it in code. For those who prefer doing it in code, it will require a bit more of configuration. That's why that's why I believe I prefer XAML, because you don't need to do anything and just the binding works. For you to do it, the binding in code, you will need to put a name to the test block, and also in the code behind, you will need to be doing the binding here by using the this bind. But this extension is only available. I hope it doesn't break, because I just set by the time it was running. Let's wait. So yeah, it didn't break.
There's a couple of base classes in RxUI.Uno Nuka package that allow you to do the binding very easily.
Yeah. So if you prefer doing the binding in code, as it was mentioned, that you can get, there's a library, right, that you can get, and so the initialization, so all the configuration that is required for you to do that in code, you can skip that. What's the name of one of the name of those libraries? Can you?
It's just RxUI.Uno. Is one you're interested in.
Okay, so there you are. So I do prefer XAML because of this. No need to add any dependencies. It's clear. Other people like it to have it in code because there's more control. You can do many other things in code that probably in XAML you'd be required to do, for example, converters. In code, you could be able to transform the data from one type to the other without having to do a converter. But in doing XAML, there's no other way of doing it.
The other thing a lot of people like is type safety. So in the code behind one, if the changes from a string to an int, it automatically just be a compiler.
Yeah, exactly. And type safety is something, because if here we're saying the test is test, but we have something that is not translatable to a string. Well, everything is translatable to a string. Let's use let's say an int. You will have a runtime error instead of while using it in code, you have a build time error. And sometimes I believe that everyone prefers to know afterhand that everything is working fine before shipping it to the markets or shipping it to the users. So can we see here that we have a very quick binding coming from Reactive UI, but we mentioned that MVVM framework is binding is one. Then the second, it's commanding. So by using Reactive UI, we have that. And let's say that let's say that here we want
Just
to
got a
add.
question from a user here.
Yeah, sure.
Just asking if the reactive command API works in platform like it does in Xamarin. So like I command and also reactive command, do they work the same?
Yes, I believe it should work just the same, and we can just test it just now. Let's add a property that's gonna be our common, and that's it's not n, it's just unit. I don't want you all, I just want unit. So let me stop the debugger so I can have more control. Whoosh. So here, just creating my comment. Let's say click comment. Some people don't like using that comment on the comment, but at least from there you can quickly see that it is a comment that we have here. And let's say, you know, constructor. Let's say that we have. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. This is what I want. This is a reactive comment. Reactive. Just create. So something really quick here, which is posing a comment, a reactive comment, and if the comment is executed, we're gonna be calling one. We're gonna be setting something to the test that we already saw that has binding capabilities. So from here, have sub panel. Let me add a button. Say. Set a common, and let me add the binding. Yeah, just adding the binding, and what's the name? Click common. Let me set some margin to separate. Let me split that 20. Let's just run the application again and let's see. So what we're looking here is being able, a comment will be bound to the comment of the button, and when the button is clicked, in this case, we're gonna be getting in our view model that event was raised, and from there we can execute any task. So we have the button here. And then we can see that by using reactive comment, we can use it in a Uno platform, and we can see here how the binding and the comment works together by using reactive UI. And but reactive UI is also one of the coolest features that I like about reactive UI is this when any value, because it will allow you to clean many of the code that we see, many of the logic that we have all around the view models in many different parts. You have it in a specific place, and to make before jumping into this when any value, just to talk about one of the pillars that I mentioned, which is the navigation. In this specific presentation, I won't go on the navigation, but it is as well possible to use reactive UI to serve the navigation of your apps for Uno platform. The reason I won't go through it is because I don't use it that much. Honestly speaking, in the community, there's people saying that you can see that that's one of the part of the reactive UI that can get some improvement. And in here, I would say that it works. It requires many different setups, and that's why probably I most of the time ended up using or another framework navigation, which is one of the coolest things about reactive UI as a framework. It is one of the frameworks, MVVM frameworks, that would allow you to mix and match with any other frameworks out there, well, not any other, with many others, because there are some others, unfortunately, that won't allow you to do anything else that are not part of the framework. So having said that, if you struggle having the navigation working and running, not saying that it doesn't work, it works, but I feel just it's a personal thing that it requires many hooks, and sometimes you just use what is available for the framework, or you just use another framework if you can do it. That's the thing. That's the best thing, that you can
We got
use
a
it.
couple of questions come in that you might be able to answer. One is they want to extend the collection. When I click on it, the result of a command, I think they're trying to say they want the result of the command to be binded to a list or something. I presume that's possible. The other one, which is probably more relevant, is does UNO support multiple screens and navigation across them? I can have multiple window instances on multiple screens. I typically use 4 screens, for example.
Well, there's a distinction of what if a Windows and a page, because you have the window that is the boundaries of your whole screen as a hardware screen, and for example in mobile, that's why this question it can clarify a bit more, because yeah, you can have different pages and you can navigate through different pages. If you mean different windows as well, you can have different windows, but depending on the platform, because for example, in Mac OS, you can have 2 windows, floating windows as part of an app, but that's not something that you will have in Android.
I know this particular uses a Windows developer, so I guess they'd be concerned with that platform.
And yeah, it's specific to the platform. In Windows you can, in Mac OS you can, and iOS and Android I don't believe you can, because of the limitations of the platform. But this is, I can clarify, and if I'm on Twitter and ask me the questions, and I will check with the maintainers and see if this is possible, because out of my head I don't have the answer. But I believe that it's not possible on iOS and Android, and it is possible on Windows and Mac OS because of the platform allows it.
Makes sense.
And so finally, I was talking about this when any, let's say that you want here in your page, you want to be, instead of having the test flow directly, this is something that is very common to use. So I'm going to be using those 2 of good properties that come, of features that come with the reactive UI. And one of this, let me set a text box. Let me just test set name. That's it. I need to define the name. I think I can, let me see. Let's say that in MVVM we have seen this happening, that we have different properties, but the one that we want to bind to the view is a combination of 2 properties. So reactive UI comes with a very useful helper, and it's actually called like that. It's called a helper that would allow you to expose a property that is not it's just a property that is used to be bound to the UI. In regular MVVM, if we want to do that, we would need to have the name, we would need to have the last name, and also we will need to have another property, and we will need to wait a second, last name. Oh, we need to have the name, we need to have the last name, which are these 2 properties are being bound here, but also we will need to have a way, so when either this one change, we notify the full name change let's say that we have a public string full name here. And by using this without 40, we might, well, there's a way to do it in 40, but let's make it here. We will need to be also doing a notification. So when this is not in the text, actually in the name and the last name. So when either one of those change, you need to be listening to those changes and manually notifying the user of another change. By using reactive UI, there's a way by doing the same, but a much cleaner way. And those are the type of benefits that you get when you're using reactive UI in let's say in any application. Let me 1 second. I have it around here, so it's really quick because
So
I have
only a couple minutes left.
Yeah, that's why I'm doing it quick before my time runs out. And what I'm gonna be doing here is using observable as property helper, and it is a way for you to use an observable and expose a property without having to create a full property for the full name, because what you really want here is bind 2 or more values from your view model into expose it as a real property. And the way that you can create that, it's so here, instead of creating a full property, yes, for name, and then we're gonna get the value. So there we have everything that is needed to do the work, but also now we will also need to listen to when things change. And for that, we're gonna be using this when any value. Though this when any value is an extension that it was gonna listen in this case when any value change here, either the last name or the name, and it's gonna be mapping the results. Here we're doing what we want with it. It's just combining the result of those 2 properties, and then that combination, we're gonna be mapping the value to the property that we specify here. And we don't need to specify this because this is gonna be handled by reactive UI. So here, let me see, because I will need something else, is that here the mode, it's I need to make it 2-way. So we have so far seen the samples running on UWP and Android the same way as it was. Uno platform is another way to get reactive UI and .NET code into WebAssembly, and Uno UI, as was mentioned earlier as well, it's going to help you run on Linux using a skill shop. So let's this sample I'm going to run in UWP, and I think that after this I'm going to get probably a couple of questions if there's time. If not, you can find me on Twitter, and
yeah, we might supply everyone with your Twitter details so they can ask questions.
Yeah, he's complaining for something. Let me see the tight namespace, Andre.
I think you had first name in the view model and name in everywhere else. Oh no.
No, it's not compiling here. Let me see really quick, and if this doesn't build, okay, I can. So something's going on that we can see, and for some reason it's not running. And I know I run, but this sample, what really wanted to show was a way that you can have text bus bound to a reactive UI application, and text bus bound to the view model, and using the reactive UI capabilities of observable as a property helper. This when any value, but as well this doesn't stop there. You can use dynamic data that we're going to be talking about. Well, not me, but later there's a whole presentation about dynamic data, and that dynamic data will also be available for you to use on your UI application, your platform applications. I don't wanna really sorry for the last. And with that, I just want to say that thank you. One last word that I want to say, that if you love open source, I said it a couple of times, if you love open source, or if you getting into open source, Reactive UI and Uno Platform are, for me and for my experience, the two most welcome open source projects that you can find in .NET. So I would advise you to go to knock the maintainers and say that you are available, and they will be more than happy to have you on board. With that, I want to say thank you. It was for me a pleasure to be here today in the first Reactive UI conference, and looking forward to be here next year. Thank you very much.